Do it live. Okay, what's up, everyone? This is Nick with DraftBit. I'm your host for these Friday office hours live streams, and today I'm joined by Aman Mittal and Tim Grace. You guys want to introduce yourselves real quick, Tim?
Sure. I am Tim Grace. I'm COO at DraftBit and excited to show off some of our very early Firebase integration experience for you guys today.
Hi, I'm Aman Mittal. I'm tech writer at DraftBit, and I'm as excited as you guys are in learning about Firebase.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, so as Tim mentioned today, what we're going to do is go through setting up a new Firebase and then connecting it to DraftBit. This is a feature in DraftBit which not only is pre-release, so you all don't have access to it yet, but it's also still in beta, and we might run into some bugs. Who knows? That's okay. This is what live streams are for. As a reminder, for those of you who are joining us on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, Periscope, toss your comments into the chat. I'm kind of emceeing today. I'm not the one demoing. So Tim is going to be the one who's kind of showing us how he sets up Firebase. If you have questions, if you have comments, or if there are things that you want us to showcase for you, just throw those things in the chat and we will get to them at a convenient stopping point in the live stream. So I'm skipping over. Should I do this? Should I skip over what's new at DraftBit? Maybe I should. Should I just show everyone what's new at DraftBit before I jump into this stuff?
Of course.
Yeah. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, so let me just share my screen. Tim, I'm going to ask you to keep me honest a little bit on things that that I should be showing, because we've released a bunch of stuff this week, and sometimes I forget what all. Come on, Firefox. Do. Screen sharing. Okay. Nice. All right, let's go into my coffee app. All right, so what did we release this week? I think last week I talked about deleting and restoring screens and components. As a reminder, you can, if you accidentally delete a screen or delete a component, we have this restore bin where you can basically restore anything that you've deleted back into your app. This works for both screens and components, and also works with keyboard shortcuts. So now I can hit delete to delete something. I can Control Z to undo something. I can Control C and Control V to copy and paste things. So that is all a pretty cool experience in DraftBit. I think I also mentioned last week that we now have this App Store publishing service that is in beta. If you hit this little link in the publishing menu, you can get help from a team member at DraftBit in helping publish your app to the App Store. So that's pretty neat. You do need to be on a pro plan to publish to the App Store, because it requires you taking your source code out of DraftBit, which is a pro plan feature. All right, what else? I'm going to go look at our product channel and figure out.
What about nested strings and arrays?
Ooh. Okay, that one's hard for me to demo because I haven't played with it myself, but let's try it.
Fair. I'm just out here throwing you the hard balls. Sorry.
Yeah, you are throwing me the hard balls. I have to find a fetch that actually has connected data to it. Maybe here. Oh, for 2. I'm going to skip over that one, Tim, because I don't have the setup necessary to demo that. But basically, so what is Tim talking about? I'm just going to show you guys the updates feed.
Yeah.
So basically, when you in a lot of backends, you can have data tables that are connected. And so previously, our fetches were a little bit dumb in that to look up a connected connected field through a data table, it would only return the first item. And so now we've kind of upgraded how fetch handles nested strings that are nested in as arrays. And so you can do things like for my coffee app, I can now do things such as let's say I have a bunch of check-ins for my coffee. Basically, I'll probably do this in next week's live stream, honestly. Here is an item view in my app where I have this one coffee and maybe 20 people in the world have tried this coffee. And so I could build out this section down here where I could look up all of the check-ins that exist in the world for this one item. Previously, you couldn't return this array of items, but now you can. So basically that unlocks this type of functionality.
Pretty awesome.
Super awesome. Another thing that we now have is previously when you had a component that was connected to data, a couple of things happened. One, you could only select, you couldn't set that date, you couldn't set that string statically. So, so as an example, like this average ratings, a couple of fields here. This average rating is a text component that is just a static text. And I've defined it as static text. And then this number, which is the rating, is fetched from data. And so this is source type is set to data, and I can pick from any of the data that's being fed through the fetch component. So you can now set different source types on your components that are being fed from data. And then you can even, actually one of my favorite things is that on images, you have static, you have data, but you also have remote URL. So if you wanted to, rather than upload images into your assets file in DraftBit, you can, let's say I had this image on the web somewhere, I could just populate that image from an image URL using the remote URL source type. So that's that. What else did we release? I think there's a couple of other things, but
those are the three big ones you talked about. The publish.
Oh, this works now. I might be feature flagged for this, but we've made it so that when you double click components, you can edit them live on the canvas with this pop-up, as opposed to going over here to the properties panel. So that's pretty cool.
I feel like that is one of the most requested user experience improvements that we've received, is being able to inline edit like that.
Yeah. You know, I will also just mention that we are doing a few beta tests with our users. So I think I mention this probably every week, but if you are interested in helping us beta test Firebase, if you're interested in helping us beta test custom code, so injecting custom components, packages, etc., into DraftBit, or if you are interested in bringing your own authentication to DraftBit, so basically like storing an auth token from an auth provider in local storage. If you're interested in any of those three things, please reach out to us at either email help@draftbit.com and mention which betas you'd be interested in participating in, or just hit us up on the chat widget in the builder. We're not guaranteeing that just because you want them, you get to be in them, but those are three things that we are beta testing right now. And we're hoping to have some awesome users help us bang on those things. Cool. I think that's it for stuff. Awesome. There's some excitement in our chat about the things that I just showed. That's always a good thing when I show you things that we built in DraftBit and then you get excited about them. Cool. Tim, should we rock out on our featured demo here? All right, I'm gonna turn on your screen.
All right, go for it. So what I'm gonna show off today is the very beginnings of our upcoming Firebase integration. And really, this should be a fairly quick, straightforward demo. The goal is to really just be able to map a component, a text component. We'll just use that for the purposes of the demo, a text component in DraftBit to a document that you have in your Firebase Firestore. So that is going to be our goal. I am currently, as Nick has shown many times, he's working on his coffee app. I have my own app that is that involves my sneaker collection. I'm kind of into sneakers, so anyone on the stream, if you're a sneakerhead, like, give a shout. But I'm not gonna try to use my existing Firebase instance for that, nor am I gonna use my existing app. But I am gonna use the same concept of like the data, more or less the data structure that I'm using for that, and just kind of create it from scratch in Firebase right now, and just map that to a blank screen that I'll create inside of DraftBit, just to give you guys a sense for the basics for how it works. So all of that said, let's go into Firebase. So if you've never used Firebase before, let's just go from the very beginning. So I'll click Get Started. And you can see I have my project right here. My W's is the current working name of my app. It needs to be better. So also, if you're into sneakers and you're in this chat and you have a better name for my app than my W's, I'm also all ears for that.
How about all birds are awesome?
I mean, that would be antithetical to my actual collection, which contains no Allbirds. But Nick and I have a fun ongoing debate between whether Allbirds is a good brand or whether they are appropriating sneaker culture. But that is neither here nor there for this. So I'm going to add a new project. I'm just going to, again, go from scratch. And I'm just going to call this project LiveStream test. Let's just do it that way. And make sure that this is good. It's part of our DraftBit organization, which is what I want for the purpose of this demo. This may be different for you based on your setup and use case, but this is what works for us right now. And just sort of make sure that I'm not missing anything. Cool. All right. So from here, I'm going to click Continue. You can choose or not choose to have Google Analytics running. You probably do for a lot of reasons, but again, does not matter at all for the purpose of the integration that we've created. You can enable this or not. I'm going to leave it on. Actually, you know what? I'm not, because I just don't want it to. This would connect to our DraftBit analytics, and we just don't need that.
If it's any consolation to you, Tim, the traffic might be a little bit low initially, but once My W's becomes the biggest app in the App Store, that would certainly blow up DraftBit's analytics.
Oh, I'm sure. Especially since it's really only for me. I mean, maybe other people, maybe I'll unlock it for others, but it's truly just a management tool for my own.
I'll just interject there real quick. So folks who have been coming to our live streams regularly know that I'm building an app with Airtable that's a personal app. And one of the reasons that I'm using Airtable is because I don't need to worry about auth, because it's an app that's just for me. But when I do need to, if I did want to make a user-facing version of my app, then I would want to look into a tool more like Firebase, because Firebase handles user authentication and accounts and things like that in the back end very seamlessly. It's one of the superpowers of Firebase. And so if you're building an app where you plan to have users and you want them to log into your app, definitely be looking at Firebase over Airtable. That's one of the big distinguishing factors. I mean, there's a lot of differences between the two tools, but that's probably one of the biggest.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I guess I'm being somewhat disingenuous. I did choose Firebase partially because I did want the possibility of authentication and the idea that maybe other users other than myself would exist. I do have the concept of a user collection in my Firebase for my app. So maybe I guess I'm open-minded to the idea that others may use it someday. And like, by the way, Nick mentioned the differences between Airtable and Firebase. Firebase is also like a document-based database, which is different than many other databases. You're probably, if you're used to developing apps or developing software in general, and have not had experience working with the document database, it definitely behaves differently than the kind of the SQL databases that you're potentially used to working with. So that's something that if you choose Firebase as a backend for your app, something to kind of familiarize yourself with. I am not the person to go into all the details of pros and cons of document-based databases, but just wanted to highlight that as how Firebase works essentially. So I'm gonna just create. I'm gonna go right into creating a new Firestore. So you click Cloud Firestore, and then it just says create database. And I am going to start in test mode because that was what will play nicely with kind of our staging environment and our ability to test this. But I just want the toggle here for you may be different depending on your app. But for us right now, I'm going to start in test mode. And this is fine. We're going to enable. Let's go, Google.
We have a comment here from William on YouTube. He mentions that he knows he wants to use Firebase because Auth and Firestore can handle loads of rows and requests if for some reason my app suddenly becomes popular. That's certainly a good problem to have. And yes, Firestore is a very scalable tool. One watch out with Firestore and Firebase is that I've heard anecdotally that if it does blow up, their free plan is very generous, but it does run out really quick if you suddenly become popular, and it could get expensive. But yeah, the fact that they have a free plan and a lot of requests on the free plan is like super awesome to get started.
Yeah, there are for sure a lot of apps and products that are at reasonable scale that use Firebase. So it's definitely extensible if your app does blow up, and we very much hope it does, William. And we want to be helpful as much as possible to make that happen. Okay, so I'm going to do something very simple here. I'm just going to create a collection with a single document, and we'll use that as the basis for the integration. So I'm going to start a collection. I'm just going to call this collection sneakers, and click next. And then I'm just going to auto-generate a document ID for this document underneath sneakers. And I'm going to give a few fields for this document that correspond to the things that I want to keep track of on sneakers. So one of them is brand. So let's call this brand Nike. And then let's do style. Let's call it style. And that will just call, this one is a Nike Jordan 1. And we can add a few more things. I'll add like colorway. So let's call this, we'll just call this Chicago is the colorway, which is not exactly how Nike would describe it officially, but most sneakerheads would understand that. I'll do size. Most of mine are 10.5, and I will probably, we'll just add price. Let's call it retail price, because an actual original Nike Jordan 1 Chicago would probably would retail, at least today, would retail for like 100, 100 and maybe 120, and it's probably worth like 5,000. So we'll just go with the retail price. I do not have this in my collection, but I would very much like it. All right, so I have now created my collection, and I have my document, which is this Nike Jordan 1. Okay, so this is all I really need to have in my Firestore in order to take advantage of the integration in DraftBit. So actually, I realized that I am in production, and I don't want to be there. So cool. All right, I just want to make sure that I'm like toggling back and forth between windows per Nick's recommendation. Okay, so let's just go into this version, the staging version of my W's, which is not at all up to date. But I'm just gonna go to this blank screen, and I'm gonna delete out these things that are already there and just start 100% from scratch. So we literally just have a blank screen, nothing else in DraftBit right now. And so what I'm gonna do is, first I'm actually just gonna configure the Firebase integration, which requires a couple of steps. So it's gonna click over here in the properties panel to the data tab. And now you can see next to REST API, which we already had, you can see this option that says Firebase. So I'm gonna click on that. And aha, it's already, because this was in my account, it's already configured to me testing something else. Dun, dun, dun. Well,
do you need to add the service? Is this how you add the Firebase account, or do you still have to use the data tab?
You can do it from either place, but because it already, if I didn't have a Firebase set up already, when I clicked that, when I toggled over to Firebase in the properties panel, it would have given me the option to add it, but I already had it. And so I need to remove it, and that's what I'm gonna do right now, so that we can truly start from scratch. So I've now removed it, but you can access it. I kind of went through that quickly, but now if you're familiar with the data modal that we have here, now you see Firebase as an option to add. So either from the properties panel, as I showed you before, now that I've removed it, either I can go ahead and configure it from here, and then I get the Firebase modal, or I can go this direction and implement it this way. Both work. So now that I've removed the prior one that I had, we have kind of 3 steps that you need to go through to configure your Firebase. One is you have to find this config snippet that's in your Firestore. So, and it's basically the helper text here is you just need to go to your project settings and then find the snippet. And so project settings can be found in your Firestore here. And so I'm going to click project settings. And then if I scroll down, oh, do I need to do this? No, I don't need to do that. Aha. I love the real-time struggles. I love how I had this all well set up in my mind, and now I get confronted with something unexpected, and I get thrown off. Okay. I gotta remember where this is. Actually, I think I'm just gonna do this. just going to do that. Great. And so I'm just going to then continue. Awesome. Okay. So you do need to have an app. This is one step that I forgot about that I'd already set up for mine, and forgot this was a step that you had to go through. But basically, you can create your Firestore, but Firebase also has to, in order for you to have these, for the snippet to be able to add this to an app, you have to tell Firebase that you have an app. And it can be, as you saw those options, it can be iOS app, Android app, web app. Those are the 3 options. And so I just kind of picked right now web app just for the purpose of this testing. But that's one step you do have to complete before you have access to the config snippet that we need in order to complete the integration. So now when you go to project settings, if you have your app set up, you scroll down and you see this snippet, you just want to toggle over to config. And then you just want to copy and paste everything that's in this snippet and bring it over to your DraftBit modal and paste. So that is step 1. Does that make sense for Nick and Aman? You guys following?
Super simple.
Excellent. All right. So second step is I have to go to my service account and basically find my service account file and upload it, because essentially this is like the authentication step, more or less, for Firestore and Firebase. So I'm going to have to generate a key, and I don't know if that is something I want to do on the live stream. What do you usually do when this comes up, Nick?
I mean, if this is not something you're going to be putting into production, then I don't worry about it too much, because it's specific to your app. But you can always move this tab into a new browser window. We won't be able to see it. You can generate it off stream and upload it.
Yeah, I don't really see how this could be exploited in some sort of significant way. So we're purely creating this for test purposes, and this account and this particular Firestore is not really going to be used. So I'm just going to generate this key. And so you just click that, and now all of a sudden there's a JSON file that has been downloaded to your machine. And so I have a livestream test.json. And so I'm just going to go back here. Go to select a file. Oh boy, it's always fun when you can look at what is in people's.
We actually can't see because the Finder is technically a different window from the one you're sharing.
Oh, good, because who knows what's in my downloads file, people? Who knows?
Yeah, you're telling on yourself, Tim.
All right, so I have now uploaded this JSON file. And we should be good, except now we're getting a little spinning button here when I try to save it.
Thinking.
Yeah, it's thinking.
While this is thinking, William mentioned, so the learning curve on Firebase, probably easier than many app backends, but there definitely is still a learning curve. Specifically configuring Firestore sounds like it's a little bit frustrating. Tim, so like one thing that's new to me as a non-technical person is this concept of documents and items and fields it's like terminology that I'm not immediately familiar with, or sorry, collections and documents and fields. How did you find that, Tim, in your Firebase exploration?
Yeah, I mean, like it's kind of like what I was trying, to allude to earlier is that, like, if you're familiar with kind of document databases like a MongoDB or some of those other tools, and it will make more sense, but it's schemaless. And so if you're familiar with data schemas and creating them, it is a learning curve to go from thinking about data structured in that way to thinking about it structured as a collection of documents. So I do think that, like, and that's not just a Firebase thing. That's just like any document based databases like that. So I found that, like, at least for my app, it's pretty straightforward, and things mapped pretty nicely to to the idea of documents, because I just essentially have a closet, and that closet has a few attributes, to it. Like, basically, my closet is, I own something. I want to sell something that's in my closet. Like, I own it and I want to keep it. I own it and I want to sell it. Or I can add things to my closet that I just want and I don't own yet. And those are all just kind of essentially Boolean, like attributes that I have on the documents that are in my closet. And then the documents and the collections that I have in that closet are my sneakers. And each one of those sneakers is a document, as I kind of showed you when we walked through it. And so, like, at least for my specific use case, like, I didn't find the learning curve that large. I have some familiarity with, I've worked with Mongo in the past, but I would say that it entirely depends on, like, where you're coming at Firebase from and what your background is, kind of working with software before that, if that makes sense. I've now talked through the fact that there's some sort of error happening here. So I'm just going to, like, refresh it. And because refreshing just solves all problems, right? So
in Draft it does.
So I'm just going to try to do this again. So I need to go grab my snippet again. Because that's a particular error that I've not encountered before. So just gonna.
If that doesn't work, I wonder if it's just some sort of caching issue, since you had that old Firebase in there. I wonder if there's just some cobwebs. We may have to just do this with a new blank app.
It worked.
But let's see what happens first. It worked. Okay, so see, yeah. Refreshing does fix all things in Draft.
I do think it's possible that there was some, to your point about caching, that is very possible that was what was confounding things. So now I have it. It's set up. And so if I go back to my properties panel and I click on Firebase, now you can see documents and collections. And if I go in here, look, there's sneakers, the collection that I created as part of this demo. So I'm just going to go ahead and select sneakers, because that's the only collection that I can select. And then in order for me to make use of the sneaker data that's in that collection, I am going to just display some of the documents, the attributes in the document that I showed you, the brand, the colorway, et cetera. I'm just going to show them as text in a text component in DraftBit. So I'm just going to add text component here to start. And as you see on the Firebase panel, it asks for a document ID. And so right now, one of the things that is kind of part of this early version that we have is eventually we will have this drop-down populate with all the document IDs that are underneath that collection, and you can just go ahead and select them from this list. But for right now, in this kind of test version, what I need to do is I actually need to go back to my Firestore, and I need to copy just this document ID here. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to copy it, and I'm just going to drop it in here. And so now we have that document ID. So I'm just going to go into my text setup and go into data. And as an option, let's just say I want the sneakers brand to populate. And hooray! It now says Nike as the brand. So we have now successfully mapped the document in Firebase into a text component in DraftBit. And I can do whatever I want with this. I don't know. What do I want? What do I want to do, Nick?
So Tim, but before you start styling things, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that are, if you're used to pulling data into DraftBit with REST API, we moved through a few things that are like addition by subtraction. So the first thing is, can you go back into that modal where you have your Firebase set up?
I can.
So once you've sort of authenticated the Firebase, this third step shows you your collection. So one thing that's like really cool about this Firebase integration is that we're intelligently pulling in your collections and telling you what you have available to use in DraftBit. So as opposed to you having to know, okay, collection IDs and data schema and things like that, we're the beauty of this direct integration with Firebase is that we're returning this stuff and presenting you with the options of what you have in your Firebase already. And if you refresh it, so if Tim added new collections, new items, etc., he can refresh the connection, and now you would see the additional collections pop up in the screen. So that's like a little bit better experience than setting up REST API. That's one thing I wanted to mention.
Should I try that? Why don't
Yeah,
we
let's
just
try
do
it.
Let's just
Closet.
Yeah, let's do that. And generate this, and let's just call this like own, and this will be a Boolean, and we'll just say want, and that'll be a Boolean too, and we'll just say false. And that's just what I'll have for now.
So Tim, just talking about Firebase for a moment, like, so I'm not super familiar with this document-oriented style of backend. So like, if you wanted to increase the complexity of your app and maybe you like assign owners to closets where like an owner can have many closets, do you like how do you do that in Firebase? It's probably harder than if you have like relational databases like Airtable, but not impossible, or maybe it is impossible. Like, how does that work?
It is it is a very good question, because my app does have these relationships, because I do have this concept of users, and users can have potentially multiple closets. There is no way to define those relationships inside of a document database like Firebase, but there are ways to do it, and others have tried it. This is like, I don't know if you recall, like Peter and I talking about this with Peter, our CTO. I asked him specifically, I said, hey, I want to do this with my app, but it's not obvious to me how to make it work. And through the magic of the Google, he was able to find a few resources, for me to do that. And so it is possible to do it. And I think that's something that would be cool for us to create some documentation and tutorials around, like and maybe that's something I could use my app as it becomes more mature and, ready to be published to others, is like, show how I figured that out, in Firebase, which I'm still in the process of doing. But it is largely some trial and error, and basically other people out there looking to try to solve this problem and kind of showing you ways to do it. Because Firebase doesn't really tell you how to do it. You kind of have to, use the minds, the intelligent minds of other, developers out there, like how most software engineering works, I think, is Googling for how other people solve problems.
Yeah, Aman, what % of software development is Googling and Stack Overflowing?
I would say more than 70-80%, because you're just setting up a project. That's all the steps you can remember, and everything is, like I have to Google it.
There we go.
It's very
no code, low code. We're pro code here at DraftBit. Pro Googling also.
All right.
Cool. So that was one thing. Yeah. Oh yeah. Refresh that. Oh wow. Look at that.
Look at that. Yeah. So as Nick pointed out, like once you get it integrated, it is a pretty seamless process to continue to update your the integration in DraftBit as you continue to build out your Firestore.
Awesome. Cool. So that's one thing that I just want to mention is how this integration works. The other thing, you can close that out, is when I wanted to pull data into my screen, I had to add a fetch component to the screen, and then I needed to add components underneath the fetch component, and then I needed to set up the fetch component, and I needed to make sure that I defined all of my endpoints for the fetch component. But like what I saw you do was just click a few things on the screen component to define what document we were looking at for the scope of this screen, and then the component already knew. Basically, you like skipped the whole fetch setup.
Correct.
So like, can you just show us that real quick?
Yeah, I did. So I mean, literally, so like the screen knows that I have this Firebase integration, and so it already is. It's basically pointed at this document. It's looking at that one sneaker document that I pasted that ID in here. And so the components underneath this screen all have in their setup, it has basically this ability to toggle back and forth between me writing whatever I want here as a text and the data field without any other sort of fetch component required, et cetera. It just pulls down the values from that sneakers document right here in the config for that specific component. In this case, text, which is what we have working right now. But our early integration of Firebase will also include the ability to map the full collection, right? So all I did was map a single document. We will have the ability to map one collection into a list component in DraftBit as well. That's not quite ready for me to show off today. Maybe next Friday, I think that might be a good topic for us to cover. Maybe we can keep going with this, sneakers concept and like show how I would show all of the sneakers in my closet as a list inside of DraftBit, because that's the next thing that we are making available.
That's awesome. Yeah, just to whet people's appetite, I think our senior engineer Alan showed us in our team meeting this morning. It's on a branch in a PR how to map collections to your screen, and it works, and it's awesome. It's really awesome. So yeah, okay. So sorry I cut you off, Tim.
No.
I just wanted to mention those things. You can, by the way, you can still add fetch components to your screen. Fetches are not going away.
Yep.
So I think that I forget. I know for collections that one of the constraints, at least for now, is that you'll only be able to have one collection per screen from Firebase. I don't know if that also means you can only have one document per screen. I think that is the case. That's just like because this is a V1 beta. But I think if you like, let's say you wanted to fetch some data to your screen that was not the main document that you were displaying on the screen, you could still add a fetch component to your screen and do the old way of fetching data and sort of bring in like that second fetch. For
sure. Yes. So just to round this out, like I'm just going to add one more text component just to kind of show how I could like bring in all of the aspects of my document. So, oh man, that's not what I want. Come back. That is definitely not what I want. There we go. Cool. So I'm just going to take this guy and go back here. And I'm just going to pick the style. And so now we've got Nike Jordan 1. And I'll just center align it so it looks better. So I could just add as many text components as I wanted to underneath this to display all the different associated attributes to that document.
Badass. Cool. So we have a few minutes left in the live stream. This was kind of the scope of what we wanted to share. So a couple of things. One, if you have questions about this integration or you want to see us do something, please throw those questions and comments in the chat of your streaming channel of choice, and we'll do some Q&A about this. Also, I'll just re-mention, so Firebase is not a publicly facing feature yet. You can't use Firebase yourself unless we add you to the beta. So if you do want to be a beta tester of this, If you want to be a beta tester of custom code, if you want to be a beta tester of auth and async storage, please chat us with your chat widget or email help@draftbit.com. William asks, I'm guessing that auth isn't ready yet. So the short answer to that question is no. Basically, we're looking for users who are bringing their own auth servers to DraftBit and want to like store an auth token in async or local storage. We want to kind of understand what those use cases are so we can build an MVP of that feature. So that's coming. I mean, it's not actually that complex of an implementation, so that's coming very soon. And if you want to be help us beta test that, we're basically interviewing people right now. So sign up and volunteer to be interviewed for that. So we have about 10 minutes left here. I think, so we have a couple of options for this live stream. We can end it early. We can keep going on Firebase, although I think that we're a little bit limited in what we're able to demo today. We could also, I don't want to put Aman on the spot, but we could also talk a little bit about the custom code beta. So we've just talked about the Firebase beta. We could talk a little bit about the custom code beta, and maybe Aman, like I could, like we could potentially like go through one of the guides that you wrote for like custom functions or something like that, and then preview where we're headed with custom code and kind of get people excited about the custom code. Would that be like a potentially decent use of our time?
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Okay. Cool. All right. So keep the questions coming in the chat. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop over and reshare my screen again. All right, so Aman's been writing some docs for our upcoming custom code implementation. And basically, you know, we get asked a lot, like, all right, there's something about my DraftBit app that I want to build that DraftBit doesn't support today. Like it's a particular functionality or user experience, or maybe you want to bring in like, I don't know, like as an example, like we get asked a lot, can I use camera components and take a photo of with my app and then like save the photo to a camera roll as an example, or send that photo somewhere. And so our answer is always, well, no, you can't do that in DraftBit today. In order to do that, you'd have to basically build most of your app in DraftBit and then export the source code and finish some of those customizations in your own repo outside of DraftBit. And we recognize that's not the best experience in the world. And so we hope we're basically implementing a few beta features that will allow you to do more of that custom coding inside of DraftBit. So custom functions is something that that you have always had the ability to do. So these are things like we have a bunch. Aman wrote these docs. They're available at docs.draftbit.com. Navigate to the custom functions tab, and they're really simple things. For example, copy some text to a clipboard, your device's clipboard, or display a native alert on your screen, or camera permission. So basically give your device the ability to access your phone's camera, but not even like use your camera, just give it permission. So they're like very isolated like actions that you can do a DraftBit, and they're all documented again in this custom functions area of our documentation site. So I don't know, like what's a good one that we could potentially demo, Aman? Like which one of these is like easy to do in 5 minutes?
I think either the wipe,
maybe alert
would be better because you need it.
Okay. Cool. So I haven't done any of these, so I'm gonna kind of just mention that the doc is out here. It's pretty easy to follow. But so what does this do? It basically you click a button and it displays the device's alert dialog.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Cool. So the first thing I need to do is add this custom function add this code as a custom function in my app. So I would go to custom. Right now in DraftBit, I have functions, components, and packages. That's because I'm a DraftBit employee. You wouldn't be able to see components and packages in your custom code, but that's okay because we're not going to actually use those right now. So I would add a custom function. I'd paste this JavaScript, and I need to add, we basically give you a list of packages that you can add from the custom functions menu. So this is like a roundabout way of adding packages. So I want to add that one. What else do I need to do? Do I need to toggle asynchronous or anything else, or is this good to save?
No, it's good to save.
Okay. So I'll maybe just name this like my alert. And so basically when we trigger this custom function, it's going to display what happens here? All right, well, let's just do it. So I save it, my alert, okay. And then I go to this button in my app and I trigger an on-tap action, and I think I want custom function, select an option, my alert. And so I think if I run live preview, so if I tap this button, I guess the web doesn't like it. Let's try it on my phone.
It is not supported on web. It's a React Native component.
Ah, got it. So now I'm just running live preview. Cool. And so when I tap this button, let's try it. It displays this alert. And I can press OK or cancel. Okay.
That is
To dismiss it.
super dope.
I mean, like literally that took all of 2 minutes to get set up and display an alert box. And it's native too. So this will look, I have an iPhone, but this will look different on Android. It'll use Android's native libraries. So this is a super cool, simple way to just to utilize functionalities on your device. But as I mentioned, like it's a little bit limited in that, you know, custom functions, there's only so much that you can do without custom components and without having access to all the packages. And so the beta that I am teasing is we also give you access to custom components as well as custom packages. So now with access to these things, you'd be able to do things such as, I think Aman's writing a guide right now on how to use these things to take a photo with your device camera and then send it somewhere. So like that will be super useful for my coffee app because I want to be able to take photos of the coffees that I'm trying and then send them to my database. So if you're interested in participating in this beta, reach out to us. A couple of things will happen if you get accepted into the beta. The first is we'll give you access to these additional parts of the custom code functionality. We will also invite you into a private beta channel with our product team. So you'll be, you know, the ask is that you will actually be using these things and giving us feedback on the experience and using it to take your app further. And Yeah, so definitely jump on that if it's something that you're interested in using with DraftBit.
One thing I'd like to add about custom functions, sorry to interrupt you, is that
Yeah.
you can use the lifecycle hook for, like, if you want to call a function inside an use effect hook, you can add it through a custom function for a particular screen.
That's awesome. I definitely think that, like, especially hooks, there was some discussion about, like, should we be allow you to add your own hooks as like a fourth section. So expect some like quality of life upgrades to this custom code. It's like truly in alpha right now. But yeah, I mean, we definitely want, like, the most important thing for us to understand is, like, how would you use these things? And so that's really the purpose of the beta, is like, how can we make this as usable as possible? But it's really exciting to be able to inject your own source code into DraftBit and actually use it in real ways. It just expands what DraftBit can do so dramatically. So that's custom code. If you want to be a beta tester, definitely reach out to us.
William asked a question about the Firebase testing versus the off beta testing.
Yes. So Firebase handles off on the server. So you don't need, as I understand it, you don't need async storage or local storage to do off with Firebase. I think the beta, I think Peter said that you're going to be able to do like email password login, and that might be the only auth flow that we enable. So like login with Google won't be switched on. Login with a magic link that we text you won't be turned on initially, but we should add those things over time, I think. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, you don't need to participate in both betas if you're using Firebase.
Thanks for the shout out, William, on customer support. Very, very much appreciated.
Yes. Thank you.
And we'll pass this along to Angela, who is the best.
Yep, that's right. Cool. All right, so we are a little bit over time here. So if you have other questions or comments for us, just definitely reach out to us in your DraftBit builder or by emailing help@draftbit.com. Also, if you enjoyed this live stream, please share what we're doing here with your social networks. So Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, share it on your Instagram. We really love having big audiences for these things, and we really love the questions and comments, and we want more people to participate. So please, if you wouldn't mind just giving the DraftBit team a shout out on social media, it definitely puts wins in our sails and makes us move faster on moving these things into your experience. So thanks everyone for attending. Thanks Tim for that great demo. Thanks Aman for that great demo. Really enjoyed having you guys on. We will see you all same time, same place next week. Friday office hours, 10:30 Central, 16:30 GMT. Catch you next week. Bye, everyone.
You guys.
Bye-bye.